Hello everybody, welcome. This is going to be the Orang Asli of Malaysia. It's a presentation for INDG 100. Today we'll just be going over some of the things where they live, the culture, and some of the colonization methods that have been used up to now, and some of the political reforms, and a few other things consisting. So the Orang Asli, the term originally translates into original people or first peoples. Divided into 18 sub-ethnic groups, and between these 18 sub-ethnic groups, there's just the three major ones, which is Negrito, Sonoy, and Proto-Malay, and the rest fall underneath those three categories. It's a relatively intact culture, just from how isolated they have been. They were generally left alone, and they wouldn't fight when the British came. They're still relatively left alone to this day. If only certain aspects or resources are needed around their area, then contact will be initiated. The population was around 150,000 in 2013. There's new speculation that it's around 178,000 as of last year. So there is the Malay flag, and Malaysia is located in Indonesia, as you can see, on the Gulf of Thailand. So the environment. So they occupied mostly coastal and forested areas, which they still do to this day. They're a lot more restricted in these areas, or they just live on the fringes, and a lot have actually migrated into cities now as well. The language consists of Aslian, consisting of different dialects from each tribe, as when Canada does with Cree and Ojibwe and all these other languages around the same. The primary religion is animist, and then Muslim and Christianity. So animist is the belief of all living things. Everything has a purpose, and they're all living. Main initial trading routes was Malay as early as 5th century, as the Malay had migrated over way later after. So there's some of the living conditions they have though, is a stilt house, usually no piping, no running water, and some of it's broken down and run down. Indigenous political system. So the governing ways before colonization mirrored that of hierarchy, which means the chief held absolute power and decision making was left to other individuals. And by this, they are talking to the shaman, and the shaman is basically their medicine man and ongoing, and he holds all the power. He also amassed huge influence among other tribes as well, and was well respected, and they could influence other chiefs and other tribes as well. It also caused severe loyalty, as if you did not conform to the sultan or the shaman, you could be punished by death. Another one was that their power should guide all decisions, and that the chiefs would usually take these decisions so drastically that they wouldn't sway at all. And the tribes usually focused on cultural unity, again with the sultans or the shamans. They would have to hold it together, and they'd have to agree together or possibly wage war. Colonial injustices. Slavery was a large part of the Orang Asli, and coined the term Sakai, or slave dependent, which is still derogatory to them to this day. They'll still be called Sakai sometimes at school or in workplaces, just to belittle any education they may have. Continued despite abolishment of slavery. So it was abolished in 1884, and it did not finish until about 1978. And it still kind of continues sometimes to this day, where they'll be used for certain aspects, where the government will just take them. So, and another aspect would be viewed and interacted with as subjects. So when we look through, we can see that they view them pretty much as insignificant, the British. But a lot of archaeologists and scientists would come over to learn about primitive ways or ways of hunting or ways to understand and interact with the environment, such as the tigers or monkeys, and how the Orang Asli would go about sharing this land with those animals and not being harmed. They were still viewed to this day. When some people will go travel to Malaysia and they take a route, they will still be taken pictures of and kind of explored by a tour bus as if they were a site exhibit, which many find very degrading and hurtful, and usually just generally don't like it. So the villages were killed by insurgents a lot, and still to this day, as communism is still sort of a rebellion in Malaysia, very small, and they tend to see the Orang Asli as a threat to the rebellion and what can be happened. The government policy to convert them to Islam. So they saw it as an opportunity to make them understand and grow and punish them and give them advancement, I guess, civilization. They were also put on schemes or reserves, the same as First Nations. These schemes and reserves generally were just to relocate them away from the insurgents so they could take control at the time. So anything that happened, they were in control of the Orang Asli for finding certain things or understanding the enemy more. The emergency. So the emergency or civil war from 1846 to 1960 was the first acknowledgement of the Orang Asli as more than slaves and subjects for research. Colonization methods were implemented to secure Orang Asli support during this time as guides for land surveys. Again, using it against the communist insurgents so the British government can understand the outlay of the forests and the coastal regions and understand what the insurgents may try to do while guiding the British to more tactical advances. This was also really important as the government implemented a lot of schools and like consumer goods and other things to win the Orang Asli over at the time, and they saw them as vital in winning the war. They also provided basic health care and facilities, which were eventually just taken down in regards. The Orang Asli political reforms. So there was political reforms resulted in loss of land and autonomy. So a lot of this would be they cannot and will not do anything without the government consent. And they have lost so much hunting grounds in the reserves. The original reserves would start at about 15 kilometers radius and have now been reduced to around 6-kilometer radius. The Department of Orang Asli Affairs and the Rapid Regionals Act. This is another part. So what this did was it would not allow them to perform any religious instruction without parental approval before, and with this they are allowed now to basically do whatever they want and take care of the kids and the families and force them into certain situations. Integration and assimilation methods using conducts of cash crop agriculture. And by this we're talking about rice farms and rubber farms and sugarcane farms and any kind of consumer goods that may be transported over. It also well put into sweatshops and generally paid almost nothing for hours upon hours of overtime. Legal reforms to Constitution with Orang Asli involved. As the Orang Asli have been getting more educated, they have been providing more and more into an understanding of the political system and the outline and how they want a new constitution outlining as they can understand now. Current events. Residential school treatment separate families. This is in regards to the 60s scoop here in Canada. Much of it resembles the same as the government will come in and generally just take the children hoping to convert them to Islam or Christianity just so they will stop political practices and the government can have more control over certain spiritual lands. Punishment for practicing cultural ways at school. So again, like the 60s scoop, they would usually be mistreated in the residential schools, and some would be killed even to this day. As early as 2 years ago, 2 girls were killed for practicing any cultural ways and related to the animist or anything to do with the Orang Asli. Disregard for housing and infrastructure. So the government would not regard the housing or infrastructure. They would not build new houses now, as the new constitution would not approve, and anything they wanted they could simply take from the Orang Asli. If they were in possession of a land they were sitting on, the Orang Asli would have to relocate immediately or be forced by the army. So this resulted in dependency of government enforced upon the tribes. Without any real infrastructure, it would cause them to need the government to rebuild new places as they moved, or new schools, or basic health care, or new food sources, as it would be short and limited. So here's just a bibliography. It goes over everything I've talked about for now. Each provide some sort of insight into it. It will also take you into a new site about the 50,000 different dialects they have. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.